Do you think Putin succeeded at all in what he set out to do by going through with this interview?
No, he didn't succeed in any way, shape, or form. In fact, I think it just did just the opposite. I think that anybody that might have been with ignorance operating on some assumption that this war was going to end very soon or that Putin was a man to be negotiated with, he showed his true colors in that interview. He basically said that the only resolution is for the US to stop funding Ukraine so that he could then win and take over Ukraine. And then he had this like hour and 45-minute history lesson about how somehow Russia was wronged 1,500 years ago, and therefore that justified them invading Ukraine.
How successful has Putin's propaganda been from what you've seen in the last couple of years, seeping into right-wing circles and into Western social media?
Well, it seems to be more successful the further away he gets from it. When he shows his face, it's not successful at all.
What were the biggest lies that you noticed in the piece yesterday?
Everything was a lie. I mean, there was not a word that came out of his mouth that wasn't a lie. I mean, the things that were most significant were that he said, I have no intention of going into Poland or the Baltics, when he personally has said he has intentions of going into Poland and the Baltics, and everybody around him has said that. He said that effectively the reason for going into Ukraine was NATO enlargement, when that has nothing to do with it. NATO has been enlarged since he went into Ukraine, and he's not fighting wars with Finland and Sweden.
Do you see that having a lot of influence now in a lot of right-wing circles? Is this idea that NATO is the problem, NATO is the fault, and has that all mainly come from Russia?
Well, I think that everybody the right-wing circles are trying to come up with whatever they can come up with to support Putin, but it doesn't really work. I mean, it's, we have a real war and a real potential NATO conflict if he goes after NATO allies, and that has to be taken seriously.
What do you think about Elon Musk encouraging and sort of platforming this interview and kind of pushing Tucker as well to really centralize all of this on his side?
Well, I mean, these are just both businessmen. Elon Musk is a businessman, and Tucker Carlson is a businessman, and they're just trying to promote each other's business and doing a good job at it. At the end of the day, if this had been a highly effective propaganda piece, I would have been mad at Elon Musk, but it's a damp squib as far as Putin is concerned, and so,
What state is Putin in at the moment, from your perspective? How much influence and power does he even have over his own country now?
Well, he's running Russia as a totalitarian state, where anything you say will get you thrown in jail, and so he's got a lot of control. But it's not positive control. He's not winning the hearts and minds of his people. He's scaring the people into total submission.
What do you think is going to happen to him in the next few years?
Well, it all depends on the Russian people. If the Russian people say enough is enough, he could be carted out as, in an undignified way, or he could end up being like Kim Jong-un and staying there forever.
What is it that you think draws people like Tucker to be so openly pro-Russia as well and so anti-West? Right-wingers used to have an image of being patriotic, nationalistic. They used to hate the USSR, and they see it as, their enemies. But you've seen a lot of people like him recently, really, really big on the right in America, starting to basically simp for Russia. Why do you see them doing that?
Well, I think that they're hoping that sort of Putin would be on their side in terms of all their sort of agenda items, but he didn't do any of the talking points they wanted yesterday. He just went on his own sort of crazed fever dream of nonsense, and I think you could see it on Tucker's face that he was disappointed.
What do you think Tucker thought he was going to get?
I think he thought he was going to get a sort of talking points of all the things that he's upset about in America that he could then use as a wedge in U.S. policy.
And the it's been discussed that maybe Tucker should be banned from travel within the EU. Do you think that should happen?
I think it's more of a joke than a real thing.
Do you think it should happen?
No, I think that he can do whatever he wants.
So the last time I saw you, this was before the full-scale invasion of Ukraine happened, but you predicted it very successfully. It was only a few weeks later it happened. What do you predict is going to happen now in Ukraine? How is this going to end up?
Well, in your question, you say, how is it going to end or end up? Yeah, I don't think it's going to end. I think this is going to carry on. Putin's not going to stop, and the Ukrainians aren't going to stop. And I think this is going to go on and on and on, unfortunately, and a lot more people will die, and that's the sad truth of the matter.
And finally, if Putin had his way, a lot of people think it's ludicrous that he would, that they'd take Poland and he would go further than Ukraine. A lot of right-wingers say it's just because of the disputed, Donbass regions. But how likely is it that Putin would go further and carry on, through Poland and the rest of Western Europe?
Very, very likely. Putin is, he's basically needs to be at war in order to stay in power. And if he succeeds in Ukraine, he's going to move on to the next place. And if he succeeds in scaring us out of NATO, in other words, to say that we're not going to defend Estonia or Latvia, then the world is his oyster. He can take it whatever he wants.
Do you think Russia is still winning a lot of the disinformation war? I see social media flooded with pro-Russian people who live here and people who are sympathetic to their talking points. Do you see it as something that's getting more concerning?
Well, I think they're putting a great amount of resources into it. I'm not sure if they're winning that war. I mean, this is old technology now. When you read Twitter, that 95% of the comments are generated by machines. They're not people. And so I'm not sure that there's like a huge growing groundswell of support for Putin. I just don't see that.
Do you think Putin is less popular now in Russia than he was a couple of years ago?
Oh, in Russia? For sure, because their lives are miserable. Are they expressing their anger and discontent? No, because they're scared to death.